This is ITV.
Yes, so no be lies. It's in my fault. They call me Ife. Ladies and gentlemen, right about now, you did live on ITV. Based on logistics, I need you to stay here because it's today hot.
Certainly the best.
It's that time of the year again. A time of global celebrations, a time of merriment, when the eagles across the world gathered to accord one of Africa's illustrious sons his pride of place in history, a global icon of immeasurable value, a man so sublime in his philosophical ideology of making the world a better place, a pace setter in every sense of the word and in every field of human endeavor. Join us as we roll out the drums and trigger the cacophonous musings of harps, timbrels, and cymbals to celebrate the birthday anniversary of the Lion of Okada, the Oracle, a dispensation of giftings for the advancement of the cause of humanity. His Excellency, Sir Chief Dr. Gabriel Osawawu Igbeneghu CFR, GCKB, D-Lead, the Esama of Benin Kingdom. Congratulations.
Big congratulations to His Excellency Sir Chief Dr. Gabriel Osawawu Igbeneghu CFR, the Esama of Benin. Of course, it's 85th birthday anniversary. The dust generated, the reviews created across the globe is still there. And today, in line with that, we have a very, very special personality in the studio as part of the 85th birthday anniversary of the Esama. And of course, we're taking her on a special interview series. She is the only daughter of the man that has been described as the father of modern democracy in Ghana. Former Prime Minister, former President of Ghana, His Excellency Kwameh Nkruma. But it's gone into the world beyond. But of course, the impact that he made in that country, as well as the African continent, is reverberating across the globe. I'd like to thank very especially Samia Nkruma. Of course, she is the head of the Kwameh Nkruma Pan-African Center. She's a former member of the Ghanaian Parliament. I'd like to thank especially Samia for joining us this special day as part of our celebration of our Chairman Managing Director, His Excellency Sir Chief Dr. Gabriel Osawawu Igbeneghu. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for
How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
I don't know what your age is, but I must say that you look gorgeous and beautiful.
Thank you very much. I'm not young, but
So tell us, why are you in Benin City?
okay, I'm here first of all to celebrate with Chief Igbeneghu and his family.
Okay.
We thank God that he's turned 85 years old, and we want to celebrate all his good work also and his life's achievements. I'm happy to be here in this beautiful city, Benin City. I'm happy to be in this state, the Edo state, and to be in this great nation of Nigeria.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. You've been hearing of the Esama. I'm sure at one point or the other you've had contact against the background of the legacies of your father. How would you describe his exploits as an individual?
Indeed, I think he exemplifies what a modern, evolutive traditional or social leader should be. You see, we need our traditional rulers to stand out and to make a contribution to the life of the nation. Chief Igbinedian and his family, they have contributed heavily to the economic life of the state, and they've also contributed to the cultural life and of this country. It is important that we recognize the contributions of our traditional rulers, and it is important that we harmonize, you know, our traditional rulers and our African democracy with the democracy we have, let's say, imported from outside, which is the political democracy. And the best thing for us in Africa is to see how we can all work together hand in hand, leaders on different levels, the political and the social and traditional.
Okay, you described him as a cultural icon and, of course, representing the traditional institution very well in terms of helping to harmonize Africa in line with the democracy that we adopted and what is already in existence. Okay, yes. In that line, what are those key qualities in the personality of Esama that you admire, that perhaps informed this visit?
Indeed, the highest form of leadership, you know, it's to lead by example, to be active in society, as Chief Igbinedian and his family have been, and to present the best of the nation, of the state. And I think we've seen that in the past years. And the friendship between our families go a long way back. And I'm happy to be here and to support the institution and to reconnect with the family, and not just with the Igbinedian family, but with the people of this state. You know, as a staunch Pan-Africanist, it is my great pleasure and joy to link up with my other African brothers and sisters in different states, not just in the neighborhood, in the region, but all over the continent. If we want to unite, then we have to get to know each other. We have to become familiar with each other's culture. We have to reach out to each other. The best way to pave the way for unity is for us to become friends. And I think you do that by visiting each other, working together, you know, just collaborating with each other.
Are you enthralled by the sheer brilliance and giftings of the Esama in terms of the impact he has made globally, in terms of philanthropic work?
Yes. I mean, I've seen the university in past years, but also I know that his tentacles, so to speak, reach far and wide. And I think he makes us, not only in Nigeria or West Africa, but I think he makes us proud throughout the world. Like I said before, he gives a good example of what traditional, social, and cultural leader should be. And I'm sure he's giving an example to some of the younger traditional rulers that are coming up.
If you just join us, you're on to the special interview series on independent television. Today, we have a special guest, the only daughter of former Ghanaian President Kwameh Nkruma, Samia Nkruma, who is the guest of the Chairman Managing Director of Independent Television and Radio, His Excellency Sir Chief Dr. Gabriel Osawawu Igbinedian, on the occasion of his birthday, sharing some thought with us on the friendship, the relationship that has existed between both families over the years. And I'm thinking that with your presence and in line with what has been established, this will help to strengthen the bonds of friendship that have been in existence over the years. You want to throw some light into that?
No, absolutely. As I was saying, unity begins with friendship.
Okay.
With friendship, with reaching out. And since I hold very dear Osajifo Kwameh Nkrumah's vision for Africa to unite, so it is for me a duty, and I have a sense of responsibility in following in his footsteps, you know, in trying to reconnect with our African brothers and sisters everywhere.
You have the Kwameh Nkrumah Pan-African Center. What is the vision of this center?
Yes, I set it up in order to promote Kwameh Nkrumah's ideas and his writings. You know, many people don't know, but he wrote over 10 books. So he was a maker and writer of history, if you will. You know, he was part and parcel, or he led the independence struggle in Ghana, and he also led the struggle to unite, for different African countries to unite together to help liberation movements in countries that were not yet liberated or free. And as he was doing that, he was writing his books, his autobiography, his big work, Africa Must Unite, you know, giving us the how and why we must unite our African states, not just economically, but also politically. So unity of purpose, you know, common purpose, common planning. And he wrote many other books, Conscientism, Philosophy and Ideology of Decolonization. And in fact, in that last book, he's telling us that in Africa, we have been influenced by many trends, the Euro-Christian, Arab Islamic. So what do? We cannot deny these influences, but we can absorb them, embrace them, but have as our basis our traditional African humanist principles, our traditional African societies. That will be the basis, but we can embrace all other influences, digest everything, and bring out the African personality, you know, our humanist principles of communalism, collectivism, and fit that into that new African personality that must emerge and put it at the service of our development as a nation. So we are capable of embracing our diversity, religions, different ethnic groups, different languages. We are a strong enough people to embrace all this, but still hold on to our traditional African principles and ideas and religions, and use that for the growth and development of the continent.
How strong is the Pan-Africanism idea as expounded by Kwameh Nkrumah himself against the background of the current challenges that Africa is facing right now?
Indeed, we've had many challenges, not just now, but from the beginning of our independence struggle, and even post-independence. Now, the call for unity, or let's say the original call by Kwameh Nkrumah, was, as I said, for political and economic unity. It was a very comprehensive, ambitious call. But that call is still relevant today as it was 50 years ago. If we just take one reason for our economic survival, we must unite for our economic survival. And I want to give you one example. The annual yearly value of the cocoa beans. You know, Ghana, we produce cocoa, Ivory Coast, and I think you
Nigeria
here also.
Too, yeah,
Nigeria.
we do.
So the annual cocoa bean value in the market, total, all producers, it's about $10 billion. Now, let us look at the value-added products. Like if you want to make cocoa into what?
Chocolate,
paste
and stuff,
chocolate,
yeah.
cream, soap, you name it.
Tea and all
Yes,
that.
the value-added market, it's about 100 billion. So from 10 to 100. But because we are struggling with so many challenges, it's difficult for our individual African countries to add value to our raw materials. We can only do that if the different states decide to plan together their economies, to plan together to do big industrial complexes. Then we can successfully add value to every single raw material we have. And look at the difference in revenue we will get if we were producing almost everything we consume. So we have to unite for our economic survival, to be able to add value to our resources, rather than struggle separately, individually as smaller nations. In the world today, the big blocs are what? They are China, India, the United States of America, the EU. Imagine a country like Ghana. Our annual GDP is about 50 billion. But if you look at some of these blocs, China, the US, you're talking about trillions.
Of dollars.
Trillions, So how can a country whose annual GDP is in billions be able to negotiate on a fair basis with a country whose annual GDP is in trillions of dollars? You can never get a fair deal. So until and unless we unite, we are always going to be shortchanged. In our continent, we are 1.2 billion. And if you add the diaspora, because the African diaspora must be part and parcel of unity, There are about 300 Africans in the diaspora.
Okay.
Some have been taken during the enslavement period, and some have left because they had to survive, looking for greener pastures. But that 300 million can make a big contribution to our development.
Absolutely.
So we have to unite also with them. So when we talk about African unity today, we are not limiting it to the continent. We are limiting it to Africans everywhere, in the Caribbean, in North America, in what we call Latin America, everywhere in the world. Okay. Now imagine that will bring us to 1.5 billion people. Ultimately. Now tell me, what is it that we cannot do?
With a population of 1.5 billion.
Thank you.
A whole lot.
Yes. Can you imagine the dignity, the respect we will get from the whole world if 1.5 billion Africans speak with one voice?
Okay. There is a feeling that this whole talk about African unity is a hoax. The reason being that the African man has a way of thinking, has a way of doing his own thing. I mean, take for example what has been at the front burner in the last couple of days, the xenophobic attacks in South Africa. What do you make of that as a challenge towards this Pan-Africanism?
Yes, in fact, it is very sad. And we know that it's only a minority who's engaged in this. Okay. But it is still sad and bad and unfortunate. For a black man to rise against a black man, it doesn't make sense. Because they are both victims of the same system that is making the majority of Africans poor. What we should be fighting is a system that is oppressing us and not each other. So it's most unfortunate. But I want to recall Kwameh Nkrumah's definition of Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism began in North America with thinkers and activists. And people like Kwameh Nkrumah, who went on to become African leaders, they mingled with these thinkers and came back home with the intention of freeing our countries, and for new Pan-African countries to emerge. So a country like Ghana emerged as a Pan-African state. That is why on the eve of independence, Kwameh Nkruma said what? The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of Africa. So we emerged as a country, not in isolation, but a country intending to work with other countries. Now back to his definition of Pan-Africanism. He defined it as an objective of the African Revolution, freeing us, freedom and unity of the continent. So it's an objective. And what is that? The total liberation and unification of Africa. So it is something we have to work towards. It's not a sentimental dream. It's not a sentimental dream. It is something we have to work towards to liberate us fully from poverty, from dependency.
Go on, please.
To liberate us fully from poverty, from dependency. So as an objective, it's something we have to work towards. We have to work. What does that mean? We have to conscientize ourselves.
Okay.
We have to raise our consciousness to another level, a Pan-African level.
Okay.
So we have to educate ourselves in our schools, in our colleges, in our universities, you know, in our homes, you know, in our gatherings, everywhere, in every hamlet, every village, every community, every district, every state. We have to educate ourselves as to why we need to overturn what our colonialists did to us. Because these borders that we have today and we are holding on to, are we the ones who
created
them?
No.
Are we the ones who created
Absolutely
them?
not.
Who created them? The people who came to oppress us so that we serve as, you know, just a storeroom for them to take our raw materials, take them out cheaply to serve the industries of other countries. So are we saying we are going to fight and kill each other to preserve those borders that you and I didn't grow up or didn't create? It is illogical. So we have to free our minds, first of all, from that miseducation. The first call is we have to start teaching in our schools. What is Pan-Africanism? Why must we unite? You know? And the benefits, the great benefits that as Africans will accrue to us if we start working together. And it is my hope that the younger generation, the generation that's coming up, will embrace this call. That is why I've set up the Kwameh Nkruma Pan-African Center. So we reintroduce these ideas to our younger people.
Okay. Thank you so much. If you just join us, you're on to the ITV special interview series. Our guest is Samia Nkruma, daughter of former Ghanaian President Kwameh Nkruma, sharing some thought with us on some of the lofty ideas of Pan-Africanism, which Kwameh Nkruma himself propounded, propagated, and projected. And of course, his legacies are still there. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back to talk more with our guest on the program.
Together.
Thanks again for rejoining us on the ITV special interview series. Today we have Samia Nkruma, daughter of former Ghanaian President Kwameh Nkruma, sharing some thoughts with us. Now, let me come back to you. You talked so much with passion on the issue of Pan-Africanism, and from the works that you've done, founding the Kwameh Nkruma Pan-African Center is a clear-cut manifestation of how you've embraced Pan-Africanism. Now, my concern here is that from pre-colonial to colonial and then to post-colonial, it looks like there's been a gradual decline in the numbers of Pan-Africanists, so to speak, from Kwameh Nkrumah in Ghana to Zikiwe in Nigeria, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, and several others in other parts of Africa. What do you make of this as a challenge, leadership, to drive Pan-Africanism at continental level?
Yes, indeed. There was so much hope after our countries gained independence,
yes,
you know, that we are going to turn things around for our people. But you see, our progress or whatever happens in Africa is not separate from what is happening all over the world. Okay. And many of our countries got caught up in the Cold War in the 60s and 70s. That is why some of our leaders were founding the non-aligned movements. You know, it is the same Kwameh Nkrumah who used to say, we neither look east nor west, we look forward. But unfortunately, many progressive, nationalistic, strong leaders were eliminated because they were perceived to be looking not just to the west, but also to the east. Okay. And so they became victims of that, you see. Many leaders from Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba, Kwameh Nkrumah himself, and so many others, you know. So that somehow took us a bit back in our development. The elimination of these very progressive leaders, very strong leaders, took us a bit back, you see. And we have to now work hard to make sure that the right leadership, the Pan-African, progressive, pro-people leadership takes center stage. Okay. The whole idea of independence was why? You gain political independence, and then you gain what we call economic independence. Regaining control over your land, your resources, your economies. This is the battle we have now. We are still on it, as we say. How do we gain our economic independence? Because until that happens, we cannot deliver to the people. We cannot deliver the basic needs. Clean drinking water across the board, electricity for all, quality education, basic access to health. These are things that any civilized people must aspire to. Unfortunately now in our politics, in many of our countries, there's the winner-takes-all syndrome.
Absolutely.
You know? So I win power and that's it. I only have around me, I only help businesses of people who are with me politically. Now this, I dare say, is even contrary to our traditional African humanist principles.
So you're saying it's borrowed? It's
yes,
borrowed,
this the winner-takes-all is not working in Africa. And we need to re-examine it. You see, traditionally, we like to reach consensus. Yes, there's always a leader and others, but we try and reach consensus. We don't leave people behind, completely out of the system, just because they don't agree with us.
Okay.
So this winner-takes-all trend is alien to our African culture, and we need to examine it, either by introducing proportional representation, either by more inclusiveness, but inclusivity we must have in our political life and in our economic life. It is not African to have people reduced to abject poverty and thinking it's okay. Where is our collectivism? Where is our communalism? You know, we are not individualistic by nature. So we need to think about that, how we are running our economic system and our political system. And when we do that, it will be easier to choose progressive leaders. Progressive leadership will emerge. But popular determination, the power of the people, we must rediscover the power of the people, because it's the power of the people that got us independence. You see, yes, leaders emerged, but the people bought into that message, the anti-colonial message. The same thing today. The people, leaders will emerge, but we, the people, must buy into the anti-poverty message. You see, we have to buy into the anti-winner-takes-all message. We have to embrace it, and popular determination must put pressure on leaders to do the right thing. We make our leaders, so we need to understand the power of the people.
Okay. Let's just look on the flip side. There are a lot of Africans abroad. I mean, I heard from you backstage that you spent over more than 2 decades abroad before you got back, and then you got involved in active politics. What do you make of the impact of Africans in diaspora? Often the time I hear some of them don't even want to come back home. They feel that the continent is bedeviled with a lot of challenges and they don't want to go through that. What do you make of that?
Yes, indeed. And you know, we all must heal. It's not only the diaspora which needs to be healed, you know, to come back, but even the people on the continent, the mother continent. We must understand why it's important to have our brothers and sisters back, playing a role in our, not just economic life, but even political. So what am I saying? You see, we talk about diaspora remittances, diaspora investments, diaspora funds, diaspora this and that. But what are we offering this diaspora that is returning? You see, we have to make it easy for them to be part and parcel of decision making. That is the real meaning of returning. Okay. You see, they have to have the right to vote. They have to have the citizenship. You see, in some of our countries, you cannot be, you cannot seek certain offices unless you revoke or renounce
your citizenship of another country where you've been?
Yes, so this is scaring some people from coming back. What if it doesn't work? Then so, you know, we have to pave the way for the diaspora to be fully engaged in decision making. That is the way that will make them come back fully, not just with their money, not just with their businesses, but with their hearts and minds. So I think there's a lot of work that we need to do. But I believe that part of our development is dependent on how much we can open up the space truly in every sense for this diaspora. This is the only way we can reverse the consequences of enslavement and of colonialism.
Okay, Africa is blessed with a very rich and robust population of women. You've had a fair share of it, being in politics, and then for the first time, hoping that you can have the opportunity again to be there to participate in active politics. I think about 2 years ago, I was in Ghana. I had an interview like this with former First Lady Nana Rawlings, and it was very, very illuminating And well, she gave it a try, but it didn't really work out. What do you make of this as a challenge in promoting and projecting women's agenda, in a sense, to have that inclusiveness in governance?
That's right, and it's so necessary for us to have more women at all levels of leadership, not just the political. You know, I want to recall another a quote from one of Kwameh Nkrumah's books, Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, and this is how it goes. You can measure the degree of a country's revolutionary awareness by the political maturity of its women. What are we saying? Revolution here, I take it to be change, great upheaval. Now, you cannot have this great change unless the women enter the arena and are part and parcel of the struggle. It happened during our independence struggle. I'm sure the same here, but in Ghana, women played a very strong role in making the independence struggle successful. And they were not just educated women, petty traders, market women, students, nurses, teachers, everybody, they were part of it. So if we want to see change, you have to have women enter the arena full force alongside our men. That is what would change things, because women are the grassroots. They are the community. They are the mothers. Everybody has a mother.
But they say women are their own enemies. Women are their own enemies because they hardly support one another. How do you think we can
I've heard that, and I don't accept. I've never accepted that.
I don't expect you to agree.
Yes.
I don't expect you to agree.
You know why? Because men also are their own enemies. I mean, you know, if you're talking about politics, you have your opponents and you have your supporters. But it is true that there are certain things that work against women. And I'm not just talking about cultural things, but the heavy monetization of politics, for example, which makes sometimes, you know, victory goes to the highest bidder. These are things that somehow don't work in favor of women, because it's harder for women to raise funds. And it's harder to find very wealthy women too. So that heavy monetization of politics is hindering more women from entering the arena. Another thing is the rough way we do politics. Excuse me to say, the dirty politics, becoming too personal, hitting below the belt. That too is inhibiting some women from entering. But we must overcome that, you see? We must overcome that so we can have more women enter. And that is why some of us who have an advantage here or there, we will never give up. We will always, you know, try and stay in. Come back. It doesn't matter how difficult the journey is, you know, but it is a process. Some of us must pave the way for the younger ones to come.
Are you giving a try to politics again?
Yes, 2020 I hope to re-enter Parliament. I will contest in my old constituency, and I'm hopeful.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just talk about the legacies of Kwameh Nkrumah. I know that 21st of September is a great day in Ghana. It's a public holiday, as a matter of fact.
That's right.
What are your expectations? And then the 110th anniversary is also being celebrated in another part of Africa, in another country in Africa. What does this? What do you derive from all of this personally?
Yes, you are very right. In fact, this Saturday, coming 21st of September, it will be the 110th anniversary of Kwameh Nkrumah's birth. And in Ghana, it is the Kwameh Nkrumah Memorial Day. It's a public holiday, so many will be marking it. But yes, I won't be there this year. I won't be in my base in Ghana. However, I will be in Lusaka because there's a Kwameh Nkrumah University in Zambia, which is celebrating 50 years. And that coincides also with the birthday celebrations of Kwameh Nkrumah. Now, the legacy you spoke about, I think I think the reason we still think and talk about Kwameh Nkrumah is partly because he wrote copiously and left us all his ideas in those writings. It is still there. Anyone can go and look for them and find out what he was urging us to do. And many of the things he said are quite prophetic, He predicted the proliferation of foreign military bases, for example, and that's why he said we must have an African high command, military command, common defense and strategy. Otherwise, our continent will be filled with what? Foreign military bases. We know that is the case today.
Now.
He was talking about the Inga Dam in the Congo, that dam, if we manage to construct it, it could give almost the whole continent electricity. But he said no one African country can do it on its own, because you know dams are very expensive projects. He said several countries have to do it. Till today, the Inga Dam is not there. He talked about greening the Sahara. I just came back from New Delhi, where the United Nations Convention to Combat Drought and Desertification was holding a conference. And we're talking about the greening of the Sahara. Now, if you listen to Kwameh Nkrumah's 1963 speech on the eve of the founding of the OAU, he was saying that in this age of science and technology, we must make the great Sahara in our continent bloom with verdant vegetation. But that requires many countries to put their hands together. Today, the AU has initiated the Great Green Wall project to plant trees and reclaim land in the Sahara. So what I'm trying to say is that his greatness lies in the fact that much of what he was saying is relevant today.
Yeah.
And we are picking it up slowly here and there, you know. So there is wisdom in revisiting his ideas and his teachings. There is, I think Africa could benefit a lot from revisiting what he said. It is no coincidence that at the turn of the last century, 1999, the BBC conducted a survey worldwide. Who is the African of the millennium? This was people popularly voting, and that was like 6 years before the end, after the end of apartheid in South Africa.
Yeah.
But guess who came
First.
by a high margin? Kwameh Nkrumah. So he became the African of the millennium. It is no coincidence.
Absolutely.
You know, God gives us these leaders once in a century or in a millennium, and I think we have to go back to the philosophies and ideologies.
There's this talk about this legacies being quasi against the background that is more or less like a case of say one thing and do exactly another thing. I said this for a purpose, which is that in spite of the years colonialism has, gone out of Africa, you still find it difficult to really see a pathway of progress and development, despite the avalanche and abundance of resources. Doesn't that bring to question the kind of mentorship that perhaps took place in those days, whether in Ghana, in Nigeria, and the rest of them?
Yes. Yeah, our conditions are similar. I mean, our various countries all over the continent. But there's another situation Kwameh Nkrumah spoke about, neo-colonialism.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard that term before.
Yeah.
And what was that? He's saying, okay, so we've gained our political independence, national liberation, but the countries, the bigger countries, still exert control and pressure on us, so that whereas we are free politically, we are not free economically. And that means we cannot be very free politically. So sometimes we are implementing policies that might not be in our best interest, but because, you know, the control, the push button comes from outside. So I believe it is courage that we lack. But that courage we can only get if we unite. It might be difficult for us separately to get up and revolt against that situation. But if we are united, who is going to stop us? So we are back to the unity issue. It looks like unity is our way out of this new colonialism. You know, it looks like unity is our way out of economic subjugation. That is what we need to do. But it's urgent that we do it, because in Africa today, 65% of the population is what? Is below 25. So the average African is a young person. These young people need to go to school, need to become educated, need to find a job, need to make babies, need to live. How are they going to manage? What are we leaving to this generation, this coming generation? So I think we are back to thinking hard that this call for unity is our only strength. That is what could revolutionize our conditions in Africa. That, of course, plus that progressive leadership you are talking about, which we badly need. But I think it all fits in together. People must push for unity. And as people push for unity, they must also push for the good, pro-people, people-centered policies and leadership.
A major burning issue in the continent is the issue of corruption, which basically, you know, has to do with me first, every other person second. And that's very prominent within the African continent. Is this innate in us, native to us, or this was also adopted, like we've highlighted earlier, some of the issues raised?
It's not native to us. Corruption is everywhere in the world, except in some countries that have succeeded in pushing it down a bit. The penalty for corruption is big, so you don't get away with it. You can't get away with it. But you see, corruption cannot happen without help from outside. And I'm talking about the big corruption, because the big corruption is the one that makes Africa bleed. Illicit flow of funds, you know. This is what really is bleeding us, and this is in billions. That cannot happen without collaboration from elsewhere. You see, the money that flows out of the continent cannot happen without collaboration.
Outside.
Yes. So it's very important. All the more reason why we are saying, you see, people must start mobilizing, organizing, joining movements, putting pressure. We have to become more transparent. You know, people must know more what is happening and how. That has to happen. You know, that is true democracy. Democracy is not just about going to vote every few years. That's only one part of it. But democracy must translate into better standard of living, better conditions. So if we are having that disconnect, we are going to vote, but things are not getting better, then there's something seriously wrong. We are not having our full democracy. We have to fight for it.
I've been talking with Samia Nkruma, sharing some with us on a whole lot of issues. We'll be back in a moment to really get up close and personal personal with you in terms of the issues that we are looking at. Once again, I want to thank you for joining us on the ITV special interview series with yours sincerely and our guest, Samia Nkruma, our guest of the Esama At His Excellency, Sir Chief Dr. Gabriel Osaro Igbeneghu, on the occasion of his 85th birthday. We'll take a short break and we'll be back with you in a moment. All right, Samia Nkruma is still with us in the studio on the closing stages of this interview. Now, before we let you go, what are your parting shots on the personality of the Esama, especially against the euphoria of the 85th birthday anniversary? And how does it feel like being the daughter of such a great personality as Kwameh Nkruma?
Okay, which one do I start with?
Well, that's at your discretion, but start with the Esamas first. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes, because it's what brought me here to you today.
Yeah.
Yes, and given all his contribution, you know, we are still looking up to leaders like him to help keep society in peace and harmony. Okay. You know, I'm a great believer in the positive role our traditional rulers can play. And our societies function this way, you know. We still rely heavily on our traditional system, and it's contributed to peace, harmony, and even growth and economic activity. So we are still looking up to him and his colleagues, you know, to steer us through. As we talk about all these political
issues.
things we need to do, we still need to know that our traditional rulers are there for us to help mediate and assist. Now, you are telling me, how does it feel? Yes, I am most humbled to be associated in any way with Kwameh Nkruma. In fact, he's my leader. He's not just my father. I always say I'm an Nkrumahist by conviction. But you know what? In addition to reading about him and his ideas, which have really gotten into me, you know, they are deep in my heart and my mind, but also the way he lived his life has left a great impression on me. You know, the house I was born in, it's on a little hill, hilly side, just outside Accra now. This house, the land was given to him by the chiefs of that area. And he started building his house. And some strong women of the party were assisting him, contributing. Mother liked it because the air was fresh there. So I was born. And then after that, Kwameh Nkruma decides to give this house to the state. He gives it to the state.
Give the house to the state?
Yes. And these women who helped
to build.
Mother tells me this story. They came one day demanding to meet him, and they were angry. So they started in their meeting. They weren't even saying, Mr. President, or anything. They, Kwameh, you are a bad man. You made us pay taxes to the states. We helped you because we wanted you to have a quiet place to go with your family to retire. Why do you have to do that? Mother says our father was laughing when they were
angry at him.
Yes, and he said no, he has to explain to them. Leaders have to lead by example. Because he's saying, you know, he's had to let go of some of his ministers because they were corrupt here and there. But so some leaders have to sacrifice and lead and do what others even cannot do. this is how, you know, you can change and build up public sentiment and opinion against corruption.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a very fulfilling moment talking with Samia Nkruma. She's the founder and head of Kwameh Nkruma Pan-African Center in Ghana, a former member of parliament also in Ghana. Well, an African in diaspora, but she's been back home now trying to contribute her quota to the development of Ghana and, of course, the African continent. I want to thank you so much for coming on the program. And I hope that some other time you're in Nigeria, in Benin City, we'll have the privilege of talking with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming.
It was a joy
thank
to
you.
be here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's it on the special interview series on Independent Television. I want to say big thanks to all those that make this program a huge success. Until some other time when we come your way again, stay blessed and bye for now.
Mayegu agonto Kwantarang Olelatan Ọ̀tún Parakoyi Ọ̀rìbàdàn Balógun Táyéṣe Ọ̀rọ̀ṣogbo Esama Ọ̀rẹ́dọ̀yà Iyáriyáre Gàgbé Nugagọlọ Rakunu ragia Rayo nugamenye Manawe Osayawe Oya kwekwe Noma Gebra metoga Noma Osawa utoga Noma Ekwine diontoga Esama
This is ITV.
I'm the man, Oski Man, like my Jamaican press call me, and my cocolettes out there. Where are you? Where are you? You're seeing me now on what? You're watching ITV Nigeria. Don't change it. If you change it, you're on a long.
Certainly the best.